Welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Stephen Brown, and in today's video, guys, I want to go over all the recent Toronto Maple Leafs news and notes ahead of the final regular season game on Friday. So I obviously got to start with Austin Matthews hitting the 60-goal plateau in the previous game against the Detroit Red Wings. He becomes just the fifth player since 1995-1996 to score 60 goals in a full season, and he did so playing the fewest amount of games since Mario Lemieux in 95-96 when he had 69 goals in 70 games that year. Him and Jaromir Jagr on the same team back in the 1990s is just not fair. When Steven Stamkos scored 60 goals back in 2011-2012, the Tampa Bay Lightning didn't make the playoffs that year, but in 2007-2008, when Alexander Ovechkin did it, he also won the Hart Ross Trophy that year, but he received 97.99% of the votes. I don't see how Austin Matthews doesn't win the Hart Trophy this year. If we're looking at the 82-game pace for both Connor McDavid and Austin Matthews this year, just 7 points separates them. 60 goals, man. And it's not just a conversation about how many goals he scores or how many points he puts up. He's also improved a lot defensively this year. And so is Connor McDavid, to give him credit. I mean, it's not a landslide, and it shouldn't be. But I do think that Austin Matthews wins it this year. Connor McDavid can be the best player in the NHL, but just not the best player this season. Both of those things can be true. The last real thing that we're chasing here is because we've already clinched home ice advantage in the first round against the Tampa Bay Lightning. They've already set a franchise record in both points, wins at home. Matthews has his 60 goals. It would just be really nice. I don't even know if he's going to play in the finale against the Bruins, but if Mitch Marner could pick up 3 points so that we could have 2 players with 100 points in a single season for the first time in franchise history. Doug Gilmour and Dave Andreychuk came oh so close in 1993-1994, but Dave Andreychuk finished with 99 points and Doug Gilmour had 111. They also played 83 games that year. Going back to that game against the Detroit Red Wings, the Maple Leafs did call up Nick Robertson in this one, and Jake Muzzin did suit up. I thought it was interesting that David Alter mentioned today that Jake Muzzin is back from an undisclosed injury, but Sheldon Keefe also said that he's not 100% and it's something that he's going to have to play through. And it goes back to the conversation that we were having about Jake Muzzin in and around the trade deadline. The two options were basically activate this player, hope that his time off helped him with his physical ailments, help him get his confidence back after suffering the concussions, because he talked about not being able to play his physical game because he was a little bit hesitant to be physical because of the concussion. So help him build his confidence back up and hope that he could be even 80% of what he was last season, because what he was just a year ago was a very, very effective defenseman for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Or the other option being to leave him on long-term injured reserve for the rest of the regular season and use the LTIR relief that you'd receive from that to upgrade the team at the trade deadline in a meaningful way. Ignoring the line combinations here, if you're looking at what this team was after they acquired Mark Giordano a day before the deadline, you could have possibly looked at acquiring another goaltender, but really the only name that was available that would have moved the needle at all was Marc-Andre Fleury, and if you couldn't be in on that trade, not really jacked or excited about the idea of acquiring anyone else, and it sounds like the Maple Leafs do more about Jack Campbell's injury than what they were letting on. So Jack was their guy, and to be fair to him, since coming back from injury, he's played good. I mean, we'll talk about him a little bit later on in the video, but you know, if you're not looking at a goalie at that point, maybe you're looking at a forward, and you're looking at Tavares and Nylander playing together this year. It just hasn't necessarily worked out. We showed it in a previous video, maybe 2 or 3 videos ago, but over the last 3 years, they've pretty much broken even at 5-on-5 in terms of the actual goals for and goals against, and for those two guys to just be breaking even, that's awful. Maybe you leave Tavares and Nylander together and you try to find another Zach Hyman, Michael Bunting type player to just really tie that line together. Or you leave Kerfoot, Tavares, Mikheyev together, which is what they've been doing the last little while when they've split up Tavares and Nylander, and you look to acquire another player to balance out the scoring and create a third scoring line with William Nylander. But maybe they were looking at that forward core and they were really liking what they were getting from Ondrej Kase, and we'll talk about him in a minute or so because there is an update on him. But before he suffered that concussion, he was an awesome option to have in that middle six. It's unfortunate, but you're going to have injuries, right? You can never have enough depth. And to look at a guy like Jake Muzzin, they haven't been able to have leaned on him the last couple of years. He's been injured going into basically every single playoff series that they've had him around. I believe he was sick or had some kind of shoulder injury going into the series against the Bruins. Then he was cross-checked from behind in the Blue Jackets series. That wasn't necessarily his fault. In the Montreal series, he pulled something. I'm not blaming him for getting hurt or anything like that. That's not necessarily his fault. But for the same reason that you move on from a guy like Nazem Kadri for getting suspended and not being able to control himself, but some would argue that that wasn't his fault because the team around him would have stepped up. He wouldn't have been in that situation or that environment. But anyway, it's a rabbit hole. My point is that if you can't lean on him or you can't count on him to be there when you need him the most, you need a contingency plan. And it doesn't sound like they're going to be able to lean on him in these playoffs. In my mind, we know that Jake Muzzin is not at 100%. Rasmus Sandin is apparently supposed to play against the Boston Bruins on Friday. We don't know if he's 100% yet or not, but if he plays well, in my mind, Rasmus Sandin plays, Jake Muzzin does not. We'll talk about Rasmus Sandin more in a minute, but looking back on the decision to activate Muzzin and not just leave him on LTIR for the remainder of the season and upgrade this team more so, I looked at it as a missed opportunity as soon as the trade deadline came and gone. I said that in those videos. And now that we know that Muzzin isn't 100% heading into the playoffs, it's more and more looking like a missed opportunity. But I guess we'll see. But there's some more updates on some more injured Maple Leafs here. Michael Bunting will not play in that final game of the regular season against the Boston Bruins, but we'll talk about him in about a minute or so because there was some interesting video of him skating around the other day, and I think it's encouraging. Rasmus Sandin is likely to play Friday versus the Boston Bruins, and that's massive. I don't think we've talked about missing him from the Maple Leafs lineup enough over the last month or so. And the fact that we haven't, maybe that speaks to the depth that the Maple Leafs have on their blue line. He was playing awesome before he was injured, so if he's at 100%, ready to step back in, yeah, he's a welcome addition to the lineup. And finally, like I mentioned before, Anze Kasha remains day-to-day with no timeline to return, but he was skating around in a regular practice jersey, not a red non-contact jersey that a guy who has a concussion would be skating around in. And like I said earlier, I am definitely not a doctor, but the little bit that I do know about concussions is that you can have no symptoms one day and symptoms the next. So, we'll see. Him coming back seems more like a personal life decision than it is a hockey one. And here's that Michael Bunting video that I mentioned earlier, and the latest news on him was from Darren Dreger, and he said that he's expected to be back for the playoffs. Now, that does not mention what game or if he's going to be 100%. It doesn't mention the severity or anything. But in this video here, I'm just going to go ahead and play it for you. This is a David Alter Twitter video from Maple Leafs Practice NHL. You have no claim to this. Do not strike my channel. Do not demonetize this video here, but do go ahead and follow David and read his work at theleafsnation.com. There's a lot of awesome people there, but he's basically just skating on one leg and then putting his weight on the other, and it was the right one that he did hurt, and he's stick handling. I know this isn't the same as playoff hockey, but it's encouraging at least. We mentioned Nick Robertson in my previous video, but I want to bring this back up again because I feel like a lot of people are down on him, but a lot of people were wondering why he wasn't called up right after Bunting was injured, because Bunting was injured and then Robertson played the next day, and then it wasn't until the game against the Red Wings where he was called up. But if we're looking at individual American Hockey League seasons from players 20 or younger, going back the last 10 years, sorted by points per game, Nick Robertson ranks 13th. I feel like the 2016-2017 season ruined young players for Leaf fans because Matthews, Marner, and Nylander just all great pretty much instantly. You know, a guy like Nick Robertson, who's just 20 years old, he's dealt with injuries, and the injuries are definitely something to be worried about. You know, is that a pattern? Is it just going to keep happening to him? It's not necessarily his fault, but it affects his standing within the organization and how people are going to view him. But he's also lost 2 years of development with what's been going on in the world. I would say just to relax. I know a lot of people were saying the same things about Timothy Liljegren 2 or 3 years ago, and I was showing the same numbers, how he stacked up against players his age in the American Hockey League over the last number of years, and he's worked out just fine, and he's only 23. I think, arguably, hands down, the biggest question in a series against the Tampa Bay Lightning is how Jack Campbell's going to play. Because the matchup is already Campbell versus Vasilevsky. You're probably not going to win that. But Jack Campbell, since coming back from injury, in 9 games is 7-0-2 with a .915 save percentage. His most recent run of his last 1, 2, 3, 4 games has been absolutely spectacular. The one game that he played against the Lightning a couple of weeks ago was really good too. We'll obviously do a video talking about how the Leafs match up against Tampa Bay, systems-wise, matchups, whatever. You know, we'll show a lot more stats, but I'm liking the odds a lot more if this is the Jack Campbell that we're gonna see. I always tend to be a little bit more positive or optimistic about things, and maybe that's something that I can work on because I don't have to be an advocate for the team. I'm a journalist. If things are bad, I just say that they're bad. And obviously, that matchup, Campbell versus Vasilevsky, I don't like that one. But the Maple Leafs are 22-10-5 against teams who are currently in the playoffs right now. I know it's frustrating and it sucks and it's miserable and it's infuriating and it's everything under the sun when they blow games to Buffalo and Montreal this year. But when it comes to playing good teams, they've showed up, and they've showed up all season long. If you want to discount the first month of the year, that October, where Matthews missed games and then was coming back from offseason wrist surgery, they're 22-8-4 against playoff teams November and onwards. But that's going to be about it for the video, guys. I know the playoffs start on May the 2nd, but someone in the Leafs Nation group chat that I'm a part of pointed out that there's a concert at Scotiabank Arena apparently on the Tuesday. So I don't know if the Maple Leafs are going to play Monday, the May 2nd, or the Wednesday, the 4th. Not 100% sure. But whenever the playoffs do start, I want to do like 3 or 4 more videos. I want to try to squeeze those in before the playoffs start. I want to do 5 reasons to be optimistic, 5 reasons to be pessimistic about them. Those will be 2 separate videos. And I want to do a video about my most preferred lineup, and then obviously a video covering how they match up against the Tampa Bay Lightning, going over some nitty-gritty, some systems, stuff like that. Similar content to what I did heading into the playoff last year against the Montreal Canadiens, but you know, throw all that in the garbage for what it was worth. I also have a sponsorship with DraftKings coming up, and I want to know your opinions on sponsorships within videos, and especially the sports gambling advertisements, because there's been a lot of them going around recently, and I see a lot of feedback and stuff like that. I don't know. It's an opportunity. It's revenue for the channel and stuff like that. I like what we got going on here, but obviously, you know, I don't want to step on anyone's toes, but like, you know, I'm not gonna, you know, it's an opportunity at the very least. So let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section, as always, not just about the sponsorship, but everything in the video, and make sure to like it if you did like it, and subscribe for more, because more is always on the way. And guys, I'll see you in the next one.